I saved 1 million ringgit in just 7 years, and today I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. You see, most people think that you will need a high 5-figure salary or rich parents to hit the 1 million, but actually you don't. You just need to understand the formula and the system to make it happen. By the end of this video, you will find out the formula and the system that I used to achieve this 1 million ringgit and how I did it in just 7 years. Once you understand how it works, you will never look at your money the same way again. So let's dive in. 1 million ringgit. It used to mean that we have made it. But today, for most people, it is just the basic for a comfortable lifestyle. Think of 1 million ringgit as an entry amount that can buy us freedom and option. Imagine this. If today you were to set aside 1 million ringgit at 4% return a year, which is quite easily achieved, it can give you 40,000 ringgit a year of passive income, which means every month you will receive 3,300 ringgit a month. Well, this amount is not much, but if you keep your expenses low, it can pay for part of your living costs, not all of it, but some. And while you cannot retire on it, but it does help to buy some sort of a freedom. The freedom to leave a job that you hate because you have some safety net there. The freedom to take a risk and start some small business if you want to. Or the freedom to simply slow down when you need it. And that's why I believe hitting 1 million by 40 years old is actually a sweet spot. At 40 years old, you probably have kids who are growing and you are the prime of your career. And during this time, some of us may experience something called the midlife crisis. And this 1 million ringgit as a safety net can buy you the freedom you need for the next phase of life. Whether is it to slow down or to take bigger risks, start your own business. That 1 million is very important. For me, this 1 million ringgit today works some sort like a safety net because it gives me the peace of mind to focus on my business, which is high risk, and knowing that my family is taken care of if anything goes wrong. Another reason for achieving that 1 million ringgit at 40 is because even if you don't increase your saving from then on, it can automatically grow up to 3 to 4 million by the time you are 60 years old. This means you might have more cash flow to enjoy when you are 40 years old, and even then also, you can still retire comfortably by 60. But if you do not hit this 1 million by 40 years old, you wait until 50, well, you need more effort in order for you to catch up with a better retirement. So here's the thing, how can we hit our first million ringgit by 40 years old? I have to say, it is not easy, but definitely it's also not impossible. You just need a formula and a system to get there. Now, let's start with the formula. So here is the formula to hit your first million ringgit. Effort times leverage equals to wealth. So what is effort? Effort basically means the amount of money that you can set aside. So that is your effort. Imagine every month saving 3,000 ringgit, you set aside 600 ringgit. That is your effort. In other words, it's also called the capital that you can set aside. Then what is leverage? When you take that money and you put it into an investment or saving account, it will generate you return. In this case here, you are not the one that's putting in effort anymore. It is that particular investment that's working for you. So this is what we mean by leverage. Think about it this way. If you set aside your money into something like EPF, what happened is that an average yearly return is about 6% or 5%. That is the leverage you are getting. But if you were to set aside that money into Google stock over the last 10 years, the compounding return on a yearly basis is roughly about 20%. So that is a much higher leverage. In other words, this is your ROI. When these two times together, you get your first million ringgit. With this formula, now you know the things that you can control is basically your effort or the leverage. The wealth can't really be controlled. It's mainly the target that you want to get there. So if you want to get to this 1 million ringgit faster, you can either increase your effort or either you increase your leverage, or you can choose to increase both at the same time. This will give you a turbocharge to reach your 1 million as soon as possible. To help you to understand it easier, I've built a cheat sheet, and let us turn to it so that we can help you to understand it better. To make it easy for all of you, we have built a calculator so that you can see how fast you can save your first million ringgit. All you need to do is just go down to the description, click the link and you can check out the calculator. Once you're on that page, you can follow along to see how to use this. Let's say you are a fresh graduate and you have 10,000 ringgit in your bank account today. That is what you put into the starting balance. Then the next item you want to fill in is your monthly saving amount. This is how much you can set aside every month today onwards. Let's say you can set aside 600 ringgit a month because that's what you can afford as a fresh graduate. The next thing you want to determine is your annual increment rate. What this means is how much more can you save every year. Let's say if we say 10%. This means that this year you can save 600 ringgit a month, but next year you can save 660 ringgit a month. Well, as your salary increase, you also want to increase the amount you save, right? So this depends on yourself, but let's just put it at 10,000 first. Then the next thing you want to fill in is your investment return rate. This is where you key in your expected annual return. Let's say you are a very safe investor. You do not want to put your money into stocks or anything because you do not want to take risks. And you only put your money into, say, money market fund or FD. Let's put it at 5%. Once you determine all this, you can press calculate. And once you press calculate, down there, we will show you the whole table of your journey to reaching your first million ringgit. As you can see, on year 1, you have 10,000 ringgit as your starting balance, and by the time you reach 19 years, you would have saved up 559,000 ringgit. And then by 22 years old, you have reached 75% of the milestone to hit your first million. You will only hit your first million 24 years down the road. This means if you're 25 years old, you will roughly hit your first million ringgit by 50 years old. And as you scroll down to 30 years later, that is when you will hit your second million. So if you started off at 25 years old, well, that's 55 years old, you have 2 million ringgit. Not too bad, right? But what if you're willing to make some changes? Let's say, instead of investing at 5%, let us have everything remain the same because you're still the same guy who's fresh graduate, 25 years old, earning the same amount of money. Those things you can't change. But there's one thing you can change. You can learn to invest and get a better return. Assuming if you are able to get 15% return a year. What are we looking at? With this update, you will hit your first 500,000 13 years down the road, and your first million will be 17 years. So now, instead of hitting your first million by 50 years old, you would have hit your first million by 42 years old. That is 8 years earlier. And you would have hit your second million by 46 years old. Comparing to investing at 5%, which you will hit 2 million by the time you are 55 years old. So that is way faster. But if investing at a higher rate is not what you want, well, you can choose to remain it at 5%. Then the next thing you can change is the increment of your effort. Means you set aside more money every year. So let's say the investment return remains at 5% and you choose to increase 20% of saving every year. So what happened is that this year you save 600 ringgit a month. Next year you want to have 20% increase, that's 720 ringgit a month. With that in mind, you are able to hit your first million at 42 years old as well. However, you need to be saving about 133,000 by the 17th year. That is about 10,000 ringgit a month of savings. Well, you better be earning a lot of money. Comparing to increasing your investment return rate, which is the leverage, to 15%, at that time, you only need to save 33,000 a year. That is slightly less than 3,000 ringgit a month. Still very possible for someone earning 15,000 or around 20,000 ringgit. So I would say this, if you want to hit your first million ringgit, it's probably better to increase your leverage than increase your effort. Now, let's move on. Alright, now that we know the formula, it's time to talk about the system that can make this work. Now, for me, I use a 4-step system where I call it T.A.S.K. The whole idea is every single ringgit you have need a task so that it can work for you. The first step is to track your expenses. It is very important to know where every single dollar you have is going. At least have a rough idea. Once you start tracking, you will probably see a pattern of your expenses. You will be able to see where you should be cutting down on your expenses and where can you to improve. It's hard to improve your finances if you don't even see a picture of where your money is going. So the first thing here, track your expenses. Step 2, assign every ringgit a job. Think about it this way, if you do not know what you're going to do with your money will have no purpose. Then it will just leak out here and there and start disappearing. But if you set aside a purpose for every single ringgit, for example, X amount ringgit to pay bill, X amount ringgit for saving, X amount ringgit for investment or for coffee, you will know how your money is serving you. Try to think of it this way, you are the CEO of your bank account. You got to decide how every single ringgit who is your worker works for you. Once you assign your money a job, you got to have the discipline to make sure that they get it done. Step number 3 is to set automation, because let us be honest, our willpower can be quite weak sometimes. You've probably got into this situation where you know you need to save money this month, but once you go online, you see something you want to buy, well, your willpower just doesn't make it and end up spending that money. So automation is your best friend. You want to automatically transfer your money into savings or the different bank account so that it can achieve what it's assigned to achieve. That way, you're also not looking at it, it just automatically happens. I personally find this to be the game changer, because when you move your money out of that normal account you have, you don't see it, that money usually get to do what it needs to do. But when you see it, well, it depends on how you feel that day. So it's much more reliable when you automate it. And finally, K is to keep your lifestyle low. I would say that this is one of the hardest things, because as your income grows, your temptation also tends to grow with it, right? You want to live a more comfortable life. And if you're not careful, suddenly those wants will turn into needs and you just can't live without those luxury. You see, keeping our lifestyle low is one of the biggest levers that we can have when it comes to accumulating wealth. Because as your income increase and you keep your lifestyle low, you are able to save more money and it helps you to reach that 1 million ringgit much faster. But I understand to stick with this system is not easy. Tracking your expenses, setting automation, remembering to keep your lifestyle low and keep within the budget, stuff like that. That is why I use this one tool called MoneyMama. MoneyMama is able to track your expenses easily on a WhatsApp interface. So unlike tracking your expenses on an Excel sheet or a separate app, what happens is after a while you tend to forget to update it because of lazy. Well, MoneyMama is just on WhatsApp itself. So all you need to do is take a picture of the receipt or key in your expenses regularly after you finish your meals. Also, you can set reminders on MoneyMama to remind you to pay your bills, remind you to key in your expenses, and remind you to set aside money every month for savings. And for those of you who want to have an in-depth analysis of your expenses, well, MoneyMama also offers a dashboard where you can click in and go to this web dashboard that shows you an in-depth analysis of your expenses. And one of my favorite features of MoneyMama is that you can turn on this thing called a roast mode, where Mama will actually roast you on WhatsApp, especially when you forget to key in your expenses or you overspend. So for those of you who are interested in implementing the T.A.S.K system, well, you can try out MoneyMama. It's free and the link is attached below. Now that we talk about the formula and system, it's time that I show you how I personally hit my first million ringgit in just 7 years. Remember the formula I talked about earlier, effort times leverage equals to wealth? I put on a high gear on both effort and leverage. Firstly, I started a business. And what happened was, I was blessed that my business became profitable quite quickly. Because of that, I was able to receive yearly dividend that was quite good. And instead of upgrading my lifestyle, I chose to invest most of that money. Then remember when we talked about the system, keeping my lifestyle low? Well, my lifestyle was so low that I don't even own my house, I actually rent a house. Because of that, I was able to set aside large amount on a monthly basis to invest aggressively using dollar cost averaging as well. Then came the next part, which is the leverage, which is the investment tool that I chose. Well, personally, I had a thesis that Bitcoin will do well. So because I believed in it early and I started investing aggressively in the earlier days, so when it took off, that became my leverage multiplier. So when Bitcoin blew up over the last few years, I managed to hit my first million ringgit. So there was no shortcut in achieving it. It was simply aggressively increasing my effort by setting aside my yearly dividend into investment, aggressively setting aside money for dollar cost averaging, and that built consistency, and finally choosing the right asset that became the accelerator and multiplier for my wealth. Now, but before you jump down to any conclusion saying that, oh wow, it's time to invest in Bitcoin or whatnot, the point here is this is not an investment advice. I'm merely sharing with you my personal journey. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin comes with high risk, high volatility. So for those of you who can't stomach the risk, well, it's better off that you do not invest in it. I chose to do it because I've spent a lot of time studying it and building my conviction towards it. So when you choose your investment tool, you better do your own research. Nonetheless, if you want me to do a full video on the Bitcoin 101, well, comment Bitcoin below. Then we'll do a full video on it. So that's the formula and the system and what I did to achieve my first million ringgit in just 7 years. At the end of the day, it's for you to decide whether you want to achieve it in 7 years, 10 years, 15 years or 20 years. And here's how you can do it. Firstly, go to the cheat sheet that we prepared, key in how much can you set aside in terms of effort and how much can you leverage on it. Then pick your timeline, whether is it 7 years, 10 years, 15 or 20 years. It all depends on your comfortability. Then start tracking your monthly expenses. Like I say, you can use MoneyMama, it is free. Then the next step is to start investing. Now, for simple beginners, I will suggest you to open an investing account like Moomoo, where within it, you can set a monthly auto invest feature. And also they have this cash plus thing that allows you to set aside your money there before you start investing into stock and earn a pretty solid return. And last but not least, people say when you announce your plan to the world, you will be committed to achieving it. Why not leave a comment down below and tell us how long you want to take to achieve your first million ringgit and how much will you set aside every month?